I ended their affair and his career. My divorce story. So, my 18-year marriage hit the rocks largely thanks to my wife's ongoing battle with alcohol and, well, another affair. This time it was with her addictions counselor. Yeah, you heard that right. After shelling out a significant chunk of change for her rehab, money I frankly didn't have to spend, only to see her spiral again, I was beyond frustrated. My lawyer and I knew we had to do something. You see, a romantic entanglement between a counselor and a patient is a huge no-go with the folks who regulate these professions. Just before the divorce was wrapped up, I lodged a formal complaint with the state board that licenses health professionals. They were already walking on thin ice because of their unprofessional behavior. I'd even managed to get him dismissed from a major teaching hospital already. Knowing they were in a serious bind, she backed off her outrageous demands for the divorce settlement. I ended up giving her a rather modest amount. I kept our home, secured custody of our 3 children who were all in their early teens, and I even got child support. Of course, her lawyer included a clause in the divorce papers, demanding I agree not to speak negatively about her new partner or their relationship. But here's where they made a huge oversight. Her lawyer never asked if I'd already filed formal charges, so there was no requirement for me to retract them. They simply assumed I was just gossiping to friends and neighbors, never imagining we had something much more serious in motion. Once the Board of Health Professions responded to my complaint, which happened shortly after the divorce was finalized, I simply told them I'd need a subpoena to testify. A subpoena, you see, overrides any prior divorce settlement agreements. They were more than happy to oblige. The outcome? He lost his license and ended up on a list of sanctioned health professionals. His career was over. He never practiced again. They eventually ran out of money in a few years, and she ended up divorcing him when their funds dried up. It took a bit longer than I anticipated because his mother had passed away, leaving him a sizable inheritance in the interim. And the cherry on top? His former wife and I actually exchanged notes, particularly hotel receipts from the time of their affair, which proved incredibly helpful for both of us in our respective divorce proceedings. It felt like justice was truly served. I got kicked out while pregnant because I told the truth. Last summer, my cousin tied the knot. It was a really special day because his wife, Emma, and her family have been practically part of our family forever. They'd known each other since they were tiny, so the whole event was buzzing with excitement for everyone. But then, as soon as the ceremony ended and the reception was just kicking off, one of the bridesmaids, Sarah, decided it was the perfect moment to announce her own engagement. Just like that, all the attention shifted from the happy newlyweds to Sarah and her incredibly pleased fiancé. Emma, my cousin's wife, didn't cause a scene. She didn't say a single negative word about it, even though she looked like she was on the verge of tears. She just kept a big smile on her face and acted genuinely happy for them, which was totally out of character for her. Usually, Emma is very direct and speaks her mind, no matter what. Fast forward to last weekend. Sarah picked Emma to be her maid of honor for her own wedding. I wasn't there, but my cousin sent me all the juicy details and some amazing snaps. And let me tell you, that's when things really got interesting. Emma's 2 younger sisters were the flower girls for Sarah's wedding. At the very last second, Emma swapped out the traditional white petals in their baskets for blue ones she brought along secretly. She instructed her sisters to keep quiet about it, and to make sure the bride didn't see them until it was time to walk down the aisle. Sarah looked so puzzled when she saw the blue petals, which completely clashed with her wedding colors. But of course she didn't say anything in the moment. Most of Sarah's other bridesmaids were also Emma's friends, had been at Emma's wedding, and were in on Emma's plan. So when Sarah started demanding to know about the blue petals at the reception, Emma's sisters and the other bridesmaids kept completely silent. The wedding planner ended up getting a lot of grief for not checking the flower girls' baskets before they walked. Finally, it was time for the speeches. They were happening in front of a giant screen displaying a loop of photos of Sarah and her new husband, which Emma herself had put together. Emma grabbed the remote for the screen and started off with some pre-approved, funny photos of Sarah with Emma and other friends, setting a lighthearted mood with a few jokes. Then, at the very end, Emma turned to Sarah and said she must be wondering about those blue petals instead of the white ones. And that's when Emma put up the very last slide of her presentation. In front of everyone, Emma announced that she was 5 months pregnant and had just found out she was having a boy. Hence the blue petals. The last slide? An ultrasound picture. There were gasps and shocked yells. Sarah completely lost her temper. But those involved in the scheme cheered so loudly that I genuinely regret watching the recordings with headphones on. Apparently, Sarah had been really difficult with her bridesmaids leading up to the wedding, causing some to drop out and forcing the others to spend unreasonable amounts on their dresses. Emma and my cousin were eventually asked to leave the party, but they were absolutely beaming. Sarah's furious mother tried to confront Emma outside, and Emma simply retorted, "Careful, careful. I'm pregnant." I have a feeling Sarah isn't speaking to most of those bridesmaids anymore. My boss stole my bonus, so I stole his sales. Alright, so cast your minds back to 2000. I was grinding away at this big financial firm, one of about 200 salespeople. The company was known for paying well, and we all expected a nice bonus every June based on our sales. April rolls around, we have this huge company meeting, and the CEO is up there gloating about how it was the best year in company history. We're all buzzing, thinking our bonuses are going to be amazing. May we submit these memos, basically our case for why we deserved what we earned. I detailed my sales growth, my percentage of total sales. It was a slam dunk, right? We were all practically counting our money. Then June hits. My bonus? Zero. Absolutely nothing. And it wasn't just me. The whole sales floor was in an uproar. Less than 20% of us got anything. The atmosphere was completely toxic. Supervisors were getting an earful. Managers were swamped with complaints. Even the VPs were dealing with widespread insubordination. Accusatory emails were flying everywhere. It felt like a full-blown mutiny. Things got even worse when we found out the supervisors were offered bonuses, and most of them took them even though their teams got nothing. My supervisor, bless his heart, tried to justify his bonus to us, saying how hard he worked. It didn't go well. People were shouting, pointing out they worked just as hard and got absolutely no compensation. For about a week, work pretty much stopped. People just didn't show up. The ones who did, like me, were seething. I came in, opened monster.com on my desk and started browsing. I stopped taking calls, stopped making sales. When my boss confronted me, I told him straight up. As soon as I got the bonus my sales deserved, I'd start working again. Until then, he could expect me to be late, looking for new jobs and leaving early. I made it clear this would continue until I found something new or he let me go. The next day, I was called to the regional sales manager's office. She'd heard about my work stoppage and wanted an explanation. I told her if she heard it from my supervisor, she already knew the reason. She tried everything, being friendly, then stern, then frankly rather upset. I kept my cool. I told her the longer the company held out on my bonus, the more sales they'd lose from my territory. I laid out my average daily sales from the previous year, calculated the weekly loss, and explained how much cheaper it would be to just pay me what I was owed and get me back to selling. Then I thanked her for her time and walked out of the office and out of work for the day. The following day I showed up, checked my emails. Seriously, some were farewell messages from coworkers who had already quit over their bonuses, and went right back to monster.com. Soon enough, I was called to the national sales manager's office. He was the big boss, overseeing all 200 of us. He said he understood why I was upset. I asked him if withholding bonuses from 80% of his sales force was his idea. He didn't answer. He just told me I'd be getting a check on Monday, and could I please go back to work? I told him I'd go back to my desk, but work wouldn't resume until that check was in my hand. Back at my desk, more emails, more people had resigned. The very next day, an email went out to the entire sales force. Management had re-evaluated the financials and decided June bonuses would be issued shortly. They even apologized for the delay and reminded us how valuable we were. I also got another email, this one from the national sales manager, saying that while bonuses were scheduled for Monday, he'd personally bring my check to my desk the following day. So I showed up the next day, sat down, and soon enough the national sales manager walked over and handed me my bonus check. I thanked him, and then I handed him my resignation, effective immediately. I'd included a request for my unused vacation time to be paid out before I left. As he read it, I started clearing out my desk. While I was doing that, another coworker also resigned. We ended up walking out together, heading straight to the bar across the street to celebrate our new unemployment. I later heard from former colleagues that even though the company eventually paid the bonuses, they still lost about 20% of their sales force in the next 2 months. Corporate greed, right? You just gotta love it. My evil teacher tried to ruin my life, so I got her fired. Back in high school, I was pretty much your average quiet kid. I got decent grades, swam competitively, wrote for the school paper, and generally stayed out of trouble. Because I was an avid reader, I had been on the honors English track since freshman year. But during the second semester of my junior year, I was placed in a classical literature class, which is where I met my own personal nightmare. A teacher I'll call Ms. Umbridge. She put on a sweet, sugary act for everyone else, but for some reason she absolutely loathed me. To this day I don't know why. Maybe it was because I occasionally drifted off in class due to an undiagnosed thyroid condition and 5 a.m. swim practices, but it's not like I was doing it constantly. Half of our grade in her class depended on essays. Since I wrote for the school paper, I wasn't worried. But when our first paper came back, I was staring at a D. I was devastated. I went to her after class to ask for feedback, but her only explanation was that my writing was uninspired. When I asked for examples of what she wanted, she told me to see her during study hall. I showed up hoping for guidance. Instead, she spent the entire hour tearing me down and making me feel utterly worthless. I left her room in tears. My friend, who was easily the smartest student in our grade and the future valedictorian, offered to help me with the next essay. We spent hours perfecting it. My friend never got below an A dash, but when I handed this paper in, Ms. Umbridge gave me another D. Frustrated and suspicious, my friend took my paper to her own AP English teacher under the guise of wanting feedback for a writing contest. The AP teacher read it and said it was easily A grade work. My friend then showed him my first paper, and he actually liked that one even better. It was clear Ms. Umbridge was grading me based on a personal grudge, not my actual work. I wanted to give her one last chance to do the right thing. I went to Ms. Umbridge's study hall 3 separate times to get her direct feedback on our third paper. I took detailed notes and she marked up my drafts in bright red ink. I made every single correction she asked for. When she handed it back, I got a D+. She actually smirked at me and congratulated me on my improvement. That was the last straw. I took the paper to my school newspaper advisor, an incredibly talented writer. He read it and confirmed it was easily a solid A. I wanted to switch classes, but our school didn't just let students swap courses mid-semester. However, my friend pointed out that athletes got moved around all the time to keep their GPA up. Since my dad was friends with the athletic director, I set up a meeting with him and my swim coach. I explained that I was in danger of losing my sports eligibility because of my English grade. When they read my essays, they were baffled by the low grades. They brought in the vice principal. I explained the situation, and when he asked if I had ever sought help from my teacher, I triumphantly handed over 3 drafts of my paper covered in Ms. Umbridge's red pen. The administration pulled in the AP English teacher and my newspaper advisor to grade the papers blindly. Both of them graded my work as an A- or better. My dad was called in, and when he saw what was happening, he was furious. He demanded I be moved immediately, and that Ms. Umbridge's grading practices be investigated. The next morning, we had a massive confrontation in the VP's office with Ms. Umbridge. She walked in smug, clearly thinking she was about to humiliate me. She told everyone I lacked the intelligence for honors English and should be demoted to basic classes. The VP asked her if she had ever tried to help me, or if I had ever asked for assistance. No, she lied. The student has never asked for help. The VP then slid the 3 red ink drafts across the desk. Ms. Umbridge turned bright red. She panicked, calling me a liar and claiming that wasn't her handwriting. The room erupted into shouting, and I was sent out to wait in the hallway. The arguments got so loud that even the front office staff could hear the yelling. When the dust settled, I was immediately transferred to a regular English class taught by Ms. Honey, the head of the English department. My awful D grade was completely wiped clean. Ms. Honey's class was incredibly easy compared to honors, but I worked my absolute heart out because I refused to let anyone think Ms. Umbridge was right about me. I finished my assignments so fast that Ms. Honey had me spend my free class time tutoring other students. I ended the term with over a 100% average. At the end of the semester, Ms. Honey called me in. She recommended I return to honors English for my senior year. Seeing my terrified expression, she quickly reassured me that Ms. Umbridge would not be my teacher. In fact, she was being let go at the end of the year. Ms. Honey then revealed that the administration had placed me in her class as a test. They trusted her to evaluate whether I was actually struggling, or if Ms. Umbridge was targeting me. Ms. Honey looked at me and said, "You absolutely belong in honors. I am so sorry for how you were treated." I broke down and sobbed. I hadn't realized how deeply Ms. Umbridge's cruelty had damaged my self-esteem until that exact moment of validation. I'm in my 30s now, and I actually write for a living. Even though I've built a successful career, I still struggle with self-doubt because of what that teacher did to me. But in the end, truth prevailed, and she lost her job because she let her petty bitterness get the best of her. My stepmom gave away my PS4, so I rented out her house. I've spent a lot of time reading crazy family stories online, but I never thought I'd be sharing one of my own. Today I'm finally putting this out there. To give you some background, I am an only child. A few years back, my mom passed away from cancer at the age of 55. It completely shattered my dad. They had been together since their university days and were deeply in love. Around the time the main events of this story kicked off, I was 22 and preparing to graduate with a degree in chemistry. Thanks to a full-ride scholarship, I didn't have to worry about tuition, which is a key detail for later. My dad met my stepmother, Grace, while my mom was in her final days at the hospital. Grace was actually one of her nurses. She knew exactly what to say and do to worm her way into my dad's good graces. She acted like the most caring, supportive person in the world during his grief. Even though I was only 17 at the time, my gut told me she was just a gold digger aiming for my dad's assets. But I was preparing to move abroad for university, and in my culture, we don't interfere in our parents' personal business. My dad spent a year mourning, during which Grace would check in on him under the guise of being supportive. Once that year was up, she made her move. Grace was 40 and my dad was 57. I didn't trust her for a second, but seeing my dad pull out of his deep depression made me decide to stay quiet and hope for the best. My father had been a highly successful banker, meaning he had accumulated a very comfortable fortune. Within 6 months of dating, they were married. Unfortunately, my dad's health began to rapidly decline. He never truly recovered from losing my mom. Sensing his time was short, he sat me down and asked what I needed from him to secure my future. I told him I was a grown man, completely capable of taking care of myself, and reminded him that my education was already fully paid for. I urged him to look after his sisters and their kids instead. He passed away just a year later at 59. While I had my suspicions about his nurse-turned-wife, I don't think she poisoned him. His heart was simply broken. To everyone's surprise, my dad left his 5-bedroom house entirely to me. He left small amounts to his sisters and gave Grace about 80% of his cash, which amounted to hundreds of thousands of dollars. Even though I told him I didn't need it, he also left me tens of thousands of dollars. Grace was furious. She tried to act nice, but it was obvious she wanted the house. It was located in a highly desirable, affluent neighborhood where property values were skyrocketing. In the months following my father's passing, Grace actually tried to flirt with me and gauge if I'd be interested in a romantic relationship with her. It was absolutely repulsive. Still, she continued living in the house because she had grown accustomed to the luxury. Since I was away at university and only visited the area to see my cousins, I didn't make a big deal out of the ownership. I think she genuinely forgot she had no legal right to the property, assuming I would just hand it over to her. The turning point came when she started dating a slimy guy named Ivan, who was barely older than me, just 5 months after my dad died. When I came home after graduation, the two of them treated me like an unwanted visitor in my own home. Then came the final straw. Grace casually informed me that she had given my PlayStation 4 to Ivan's cousin because she decided I was too old for video games. I didn't even know these people, yet she was giving away my belongings. I immediately changed all my online passwords, kept my composure, and decided right then that it was time to plan my move. Soon after, Grace announced she and Ivan were getting married. I told her I had secured a local job and would be finding my own place in about 3 months. She was ecstatic and condescendingly told me I was always welcome to visit our home. She then asked if I could house sit for her while they went back to her home country for the wedding and an extended honeymoon. I agreed to watch the house, carefully avoiding the phrase "your house." The second they departed for their trip, I put the property up for rent. I hired a moving company to pack up all of Grace's furniture and personal belongings and sent them to a secure storage facility, paying for 4 months in advance. I restored all of my biological parents' original furniture, changed every single lock on the house, and waited. Within days, I was flooded with rental applications. I leased the gorgeous, fully furnished home to a wonderful young family. A lawyer, a teacher, and their 2 kids. They signed a 1-year lease and paid the deposit. I warned them about my unstable stepmother and provided them with my lawyer's contact information just in case she caused any trouble. I moved into a great apartment in the city near my new job, where I eventually met my now fiancé. When Grace returned from her honeymoon and realized she had been locked out of the property, she tried to scream and make a scene. However, my lawyer stepped in and shut her down immediately. I didn't have to utter a single word to her. Last I heard, she and her new husband left the country, likely burning through my dad's inheritance. Today, the rental income from my father's house is so substantial that I've been able to help pay for my cousin's college tuition and upgrade to a larger apartment with my partner. If Grace had simply been a decent person and respected my boundaries, I would have happily let her stay there. But she chose to act like she owned the place, so I ended up making her homeless as a wedding present. And yes, I went out and bought a brand new PlayStation. Not because I play it constantly, but because it's mine, and nobody gets to give away my things. My greedy pastors demanded my dying grandma's money. Her will ruin them. My grandmother was the absolute heartbeat of her suburban southern church for nearly half a century. I'll call it the mega chapel. She didn't just attend. She lived her faith. She ran the nursery, cooked massive breakfasts for youth retreats, and poured her life into helping others without ever asking for a single thank you. I'll never forget one youth retreat where an assistant pastor, let's call him Pastor Entitled, forgot a massive box of teaching materials back in the city. Grandma drove through the night to retrieve it so his mistake wouldn't be exposed to the senior pastor, whom I'll call Pastor Pompous. Pastor Entitled never even whispered a thank you. When I asked her why she didn't mind, she simply smiled and said her reward was helping children find their way in faith. But Grandma's lifetime of service came to a sudden halt at age 73 when a terrible car accident broke her back. For the final 10 years of her life, she was entirely bedridden and homebound. Her mind remained incredibly sharp, but her body was failing. During those lonely years, she constantly reached out to her church community, begging for visitors. Not a single person from Megachapel ever showed up. She was completely forgotten. When she entered home hospice, Grandma knew the end was near. She wanted to plan her memorial service to be held at the church she loved, hoping it might bring her old friends together one last time. She reached out to Pastor Pompous, but he was far too busy for a dying woman. Instead, he sent Pastor Entitled. According to my grandfather, the visit was sickening. Within minutes of arriving, Pastor Entitled ignored the funeral plans and began aggressively pressuring my bedridden, agonizing grandma to secure her treasure in heaven by leaving a massive inheritance to the church. My grandfather, a retired steelworker and combat veteran, firmly told him this was not the time. But the pastor wouldn't stop. He repeatedly brought the conversation back to the church's financial needs, using guilt and scripture to pressure her. Grandma started weeping. Now, you have to understand, Grandma was made of titanium. She didn't cry for herself, not even when she was told she would never walk again. To see her sobbing from emotional abuse on her deathbed was too much. Grandpa physically grabbed Pastor Entitled by his collar and threw him out of the house. Grandma held on for another 6 months through sheer willpower. When she passed, we held her service at a local funeral home. Not a single representative from Megachapel showed up. Grandpa opened the service by explaining he had personally banned both pastors. He then opened the microphone to the crowd. For over 2 hours, people shared beautiful stories of her kindness. It was the most uplifting service anyone had ever attended, and as many whispered, it was much better without the preachers anyway. But the real story happened a few weeks later at the reading of the will. In our family, reading the will was an occasion for the entire extended family to gather, laugh, and share memories over sentimental bequests. Grandpa had dropped hints that Grandma had left a few surprises, so the lawyer's conference room was packed to maximum capacity. To our utter shock, Pastor Pompous and Pastor Entitled walked in. They smugly announced that the lawyer had informed them they were personally named in the will, along with Megachapel. They took seats right at the front, next to the lawyer. Because the room was so incredibly crowded, they were trapped at the far end of the table, directly facing the entire family, with absolutely no quick way to escape. The lawyer went through the inheritances, which grew larger as he went down the list. The two pastors sat there, practically drooling as they saw the cash amounts increasing, anticipating their massive payday. Finally, the lawyer reached the section for Megachapel. "Before I read these final bequests," he said, "Grandma requested that I read this handwritten letter to everyone present." The room went dead silent as the lawyer began reading Grandma's words. Asterisk, for 10 years, not one person from Megachapel checked on me. I worked myself to the bone for you, but when I was suffering, you acted like I didn't exist. My final wish was to have my funeral at my church, hoping my old friends would come. But Pastor Pompous couldn't find the time. And when Pastor Entitled finally visited, he didn't care about my soul or my funeral. He only wanted my money. Asterisk. What he didn't know was that my original will left a double tithe, exactly 20% of my entire estate, to Megachapel. Asterisk. The lawyer paused to read the original amount. It was an absolutely staggering, life-changing fortune. The room gasped. The letter continued. Asterisk, but I felt terrible that I hadn't personally thanked the pastors. So I changed my will. I decided to adjust the church's inheritance to perfectly match the exact amount of love, care, and support they showed me during my 10 years of loneliness. Asterisk. The lawyer put the letter down and picked up the legal document. Bequest to Pastor Entitled, 1 penny. Bequest to Pastor Pompous, 1 penny. Bequest to Megachapel, 1 penny. The pastors sat there completely frozen, their faces pale with shock. The family desperately stifled our laughter, but we knew Grandma wasn't done. There is one final bequest, the lawyer continued, naming a local community outreach group run by a prominent black church in a neighboring area. The moment the name was uttered, the two pastors looked like they had seen a ghost. Years prior, Megachapel had bitterly severed ties with this outreach group over theological disputes, displaying a deep systemic prejudice that almost caused my grandparents to leave the congregation back then. Instead, Grandma had stayed to try and teach tolerance, while secretly sending her monthly donations to this charity. By leaving her wealth to them, Grandma was delivering the ultimate moral reckoning. She was proving that the people her former church looked down upon were the ones truly doing God's work. The lawyer looked directly at the trembling, humiliated pastors and read the final amount. It was the exact multi-million-dollar fortune that would have gone to Megachapel. Grandma had bypassed her greedy, neglectful church entirely, leaving her legacy to those who actually cared for the forgotten.